Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to our webinar today. My name is Maro and I'm from SGInnovate. And for those of you who don't know about us, we are a government-owned organization in Singapore that invests in and helps build deep tech startups, talent, and communities. At SGInnovate, our work involves connecting with the global deep tech ecosystem, working with entrepreneurial scientists to bring their innovative research from lab to market, as well as developing deep tech talent. Today's event, The Road to Sustainable Transportation, is presented by SGInnovate and the Polish Investment and Trade Agency. Mr. Alexander, would you like to take a minute to introduce your company?
Thank you very much, Mario. Good afternoon to everyone dialing today from Singapore, and good morning to everyone dialing in from Poland. My name is Alexander Czechowski. I'm representing Singapore branch office of Polish Investment and Trade Agency. We are also governmental agency, Polish governmental agency, supporting expansion of Polish enterprises overseas, as well as attracting and taking care of inflow of foreign direct investment into the country. E-mobility, today's topic, became one of the buzz hot topics for Polish economy in the span of the last few years, both from perspective of Polish exports as well as the key investment industries and one of the drivers of Polish economy. Therefore, I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. Wanted to express my deepest gratitude to everyone who made the time for dialing in today to hear out our esteemed panelists. Thank our esteemed panelists for willingness to share their expertise. Of course, to SGInnovate for hosting today's event and Polish Association of Alternative Fuels for accepting invitation to moderate today's discussion. So without further ado, I just wanted to wish everyone a fruitful discussion. And Alexander, over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's begin maybe with the panel discussion. I will first make an introduction, introduce myself, then the topic, and then we will go into delve into the conversation with our panelists. I know that one of them has connection problems, so hopefully by the time I reach the end of my introduction, he'll be Douglas Duncan from Bureau Power. But meanwhile, I think it's important for the audience today to understand what we're going to talk about. We're talking about the road to sustainable transportation, which is only possible with zero emission transport. This is exactly what the Polish Alternative Fuels Association does. My name is Alexander Raj. I'm a board member and external affairs director at this association. We are the largest NGO working in the zero emission transport sector in the CE region, second largest in Europe, only second to the Norwegian one. So we develop all sorts and promote all sorts of zero emission transport powertrains. But of course, in the short range for especially passenger vehicles, we focus on electromobility. I think this is a trend that is recognizable in the efforts of the entire world. The entire world economy is going into decarbonization processes. The transport component is one of the basic and most important areas to address in this regard. It is sometimes up to 30% of total emissions that are entailed in transport. For the EU, in terms of CO2 emissions, it's 15%. That is road transport sourced. Of course, there are other emissions like NO, for example, so nitrogen oxides, which account, according to the European Energy Agency, for as much as 40,000 deaths in the EU every year. So these policies that are being deployed, they're discernible in the US, they're discernible in the UK, also in the European Union, which I represent, are very much aligned. In the EU, we have the Fit for 55 package, which was introduced last year, a package of 14 acts, all aiming to bring the EU to climate neutrality by 2040. Of course, today is a major vote in the European Parliament regarding the so-called ICE phase out by 2035. So a lot is happening. And these regulations are welcome by the community of zero emission transport and by the entire business value chain that is involved in that. This is shared by Singapore as well, which aims to reduce the land transport emissions by 80% in less than 30 years. This is, of course, part of a bigger plan and a vision to achieve 100% clean energy vehicles by 2040. So we see that all over the world, these policies are aligned. But is the vision really the same? Are these policies sharing the main rudimentary basic premises to achieve those goals? And how do they vary in terms of the segments of road transport? So passenger vehicles, for heavy duty vehicles, perhaps public transport. We have with us today speakers who are actually part of all those value chains that have been named by me, who take part in driving this change, who take part in producing the key components for this change. Because obviously the phenomenon, the trend is one thing, but the technology needed to fuel it is a totally different issue. And we will find out why and how today. With me today are Professor Lynette Chia, Associate Professor at Engineering Systems and Design Pillar at the Singapore University of Technology and Design. Welcome. We have the CEO of Impact Clean Power Technology, a Polish business leader, Bartek Kras. And we have the Head of Strategic Development at Europower Group, I hope we have, Douglas Duncan. I welcome you all. I'm just going to check quickly if we are all here. Yes, we are. Great. So I'll start by a question for Professor Chia. Again, thanks for being here with us. I mentioned technology as a base, as a foundation for this whole transformation and this road to sustainable transport. So is the technology to enable this transformation of the entire automotive industry, this entire transport sector, ready to support the key goals of decarbonization in all those regions? What do you think about that?
Thanks, Alexander, for having us all in this event. Very happy to be here to share. So about your question on technology, yes, I think the decarbonization goals need to be aggressive because of the urgency. I think we all appreciate in addressing climate change. I think technology is an important part of the solution. We need alternative fuels and powertrains like electric vehicles and maybe even hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in some applications. However, technology alone is not enough. I think meeting climate goals would require significant change in the transport sector. I think this is in part because we are anticipating strong growth in the demand for transportation into the future, but particularly in regions like Asia. So in order to reduce emissions, not only do we need to have low emission vehicles, we also need to manage travel demand. So approaches like digitalization, shared mobility are some of the possible ways to address this. I think we should also appreciate that there is a time lag for new technologies to reduce carbon emissions as they are gradually introduced into the vehicle fleet, right? So the fleet has to turn over to replace older, more polluting vehicles, and these have to be retired before we see the benefits of the cleaner vehicles like EVs and realize these benefits.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good way to bring us into the next questions, the next parts of the discussion. So from Singapore, I move my attention to the CEE, to Poland. We have the CEO of one of the, I think, leading Polish technology and innovative companies, and an absolute pioneer in terms of energy storage systems, becoming now a global player, actually even reaching out as far as Singapore, as far as I know. Mr. Kras, how do you assess this Polish input, this Polish technology thought into the road to sustainable transport in the EU, definitely our region, but perhaps global markets as well, basing on your example?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this discussion. So we are working in Impact since 70 years already on the battery packs for the electric vehicles. And we started very early in the world, still focusing on combustion engine, but we were able to survive this early stage and emerge as one of the leading developers, manufacturers of the battery pack for the heavy duty transportation. So we decided to focus on this sector in order to pursue a goal for the new transportation ideas to let's say limit public transportation from the private cars, when mostly of the traffic is done by the single person, by a single car, to the mass transportation. And we are supporting strongly the development of the buses, and also the trains, as there is a trend in Europe, maybe in the rest of the world will come later, to move the trains from the diesel engines to the pure electric and battery, and later fuel cell powered drivetrains as well. So we'll impact developing from the scratch, from the single cell, the battery packs for heavy duty transportation, understanding very well the demands of the heavy duty world, that the vehicles like buses and trucks has to operate 10 to 12 years as a single vehicle. It's even 3 times longer than expectation from the passenger cars. So we have to develop special battery pack system with the longer lifetime, longer durability, and much more robust than the standard solution for the passenger cars. The second most important factor here is the safety, and we see observe in Europe a couple of fires on the electric buses. Fortunately, without any casualties, just the fires at the depots, mainly during charging. So it means that the current technology of lithium-ion cells is still unsafe. So I believe we are seeing in the intermediate state of lithium-ion technology with the liquid electrolyte and all these hazards related to the materials inside. So we in Impact working hardly to bring the next generation of the battery packs with the next technology. So we are working on solid state technology and plan to demonstrate first room temperature, let's say solid state heavy duty battery pack this year. Actually, still in June we'll be presenting first solid state solution on the battery show in Stuttgart in Germany. There are still prototypes that it shows that we are moving toward next technologies. And the second area will be the fuel cells. I strongly believe in the hydrogen as the next fuel, global fuel, after gas and coal, of course. We start development our own fuel cell system. So again, heavy duty system for the buses, but also for the trains. And this will be complete new revolution, which very few people still predict that the whole railway industry will move to hydrogen in 10 years from now. So it means that we should globally invest in the mass transportation to put people out of the cars, especially commuting to work and those daily routines, not mentioning vacations, this is a different story, but daily commuting to the mass transportation. It will be clean, it will be completely different approach. And of course, the shared mobility also will be electric. We strongly believe in it. So we have in Warsaw 20 electric buses running, all of them with batteries from Impact developed by us. Most of them are being charged in less than 10 minutes. So we can imagine complete 18 meters electric bus can be recharged in less than 10 minutes. So this is technology available today for heavy duty transportation. So it means that the buses can commute 24 hours a day without any longer stops for recharging. So this technology is existing and implemented in the real world. So there is our role as we at Impact in Poland are bringing the best possible technologies from every possible lab in the world or every possible manufacturing facility to bring to the heavy duty industry to the technologies which we can transfer from the labs to the applications in public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. That's absolutely fantastic. And I think what you mentioned, the pursuit of this changing mentality of mobility in general, where we will get accustomed to not having our own vehicle, but sharing a vehicle, to perhaps one day not even driving a vehicle with autonomous technologies coming along, is definitely the way that we want to pursue that as well. And getting rid of vehicles in cities is another goal, and public transportation, I think, plays a very, very important role here. Warsaw, of course, with the third largest e-bus fleet in the EU, is is amongst the leaders, and it's great to hear that Impact is supporting this trend. But so there's a lot of good things happening in Poland, a lot of good things happening in the CE, but there still is a kind of discrepancy between the speed of development of e-mobility in Western Northern Europe and the CE region. And I think these kind of disparities are discernible in other regions as well. For example, the United States, which also has an enormous rollout policies and public support for e-mobility, hydrogen mobility. But then again, states like California are so much different than states like Illinois, for example, with 20 times as many charging stations for e-mobility, much more hydrogen refueling stations. The infrastructure is different, the disparity is different. And I think this kind of disparity between regions is quite discernible. And I wanted to turn to our speaker from Power, Douglas Duncan. Welcome. I'm glad to see that your connection problems are resolved. So there's this phenomenon of two-speed development in the European Union, but I think it prevails in other regions as well. So my question to you is, from your perspective, how do you assess Europe's transformation towards sustainable transport, but also Singapore's and the region around you? How do you see that taking place?
Thank you, Alexander. Nice to meet all of you. Good to be part of this panel. My name is Douglas. I'm part of a Power group. Power is a Singapore company. We specialize in the design, research, and manufacturing of lithium battery cells and systems. And we cater for such applications as land electrical vehicles, heavy-duty electrical vehicles, marine electrical vehicles, and also stationary applications. We are from Singapore. We have been developing new products and distributing them across Asia as well as in Europe. So from our perspective, it's quite interesting to look at the comparison between these different markets. I would say, first of all, that Western Europe is an interesting market from perspective of electrification and renewables, because of very strong incentives and government will to implement some of these policies to really meet their decarbonization commitments. I think there's also a very strong focus on technology and some strong rooted capabilities that are that have been around for a very long time. I'll give the example, for example, the example of the Nordic countries or Holland, who have been focusing on the marine segment and the shipping segment for quite a long time, and today they are a leader in electrifying vessel solution, which is very key as well. As we look at all areas of potential improvements, but the key is really on implementing energy efficiency across different modes of transportation. And I completely agree with Bartek that initially there's a great opportunity for heavy duty transportation, public transportation, because the solution doesn't only require electrification, it also requires a different approach towards transportation and how maybe we might do more sharing of the vehicles. Going back to Poland in particular, it may be that Poland has less electric vehicles at the moment. However, what we see is that Poland is a lot more invested in the supply chain of e-mobility. It is very strong as far as capabilities and the kind of manpower needed to develop the production of the components that enable electrifications of vehicles. By the way, Poland was the biggest exporter of electric bus solutions. In 2020, I believe it was about 46%, right? So one of the largest in Europe. So being that we have this talent pool and these lower manufacturing costs, we see that as a very good country to establish manufacturing operations to serve the overall Europe. We also see that these types of countries have an opportunity to leapfrog some of the Western countries who have had to go through kind of some of the painful lessons of energy and grid infrastructure. I think Poland has a strong opportunity to think ahead about how they want to organize their transportation and their electrical infrastructure. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the positive assessment. Yes, we have 23,000 battery electric vehicles on the market, around 45 along with PHEVs. So that's not too much. Our charging infrastructure, our public charging infrastructure ranges up to 2,120 at the moment. So not too many stations. That's around 5,000 charging points. These are still small numbers. We do predict, however, that in 2025, we might have as many as 300,000 battery electric vehicles and around 45,000 public charging points. So that these numbers will exponentially grow. We are seeing that with supportive mechanisms, with the RRF facility maybe becoming launched soon, which was held up for political reasons. But you know, I'll stick maybe to you, Mr. Duncan, if I can, because there is a lot to do in electric mobility still. And charging infrastructure is amongst the key areas, but you know, energy storage systems are also, I think, absolutely strategic here. And do you think that electric heavy-duty vehicles are some part of the future? Do you think this is a viable solution? We as PSPA have done a TCO pilot project with Volvo for a 27-ton truck that was delivering for very large logistic operators. For I think 8 weeks, we accumulated nearly 40,000 parameters, and it was in a pretty warm month in Poland, and it seemed like a good alternative for mid-range deliveries. How do you assess that segment developing?
Thank you for that question, Alexander. You know, the Dura Power is also very focused on heavy-duty transportation, and in particular fleets. The reason we have started focusing on this segment is because fleets, to us, represent the biggest opportunity to achieve decarbonization. Although you know, it is frequent to hear about passenger cars in the news, and you know, everybody I guess feels more attuned to the subject of the passenger car. The reality is that the heavy-duty transportation, they are the types of vehicles that are running the longest operations, that require the highest uptime, and that usually have kind of the higher specs on motors and batteries. So they should really be the focus of initial electrification from our perspective. I'll give some example, of course, public buses, last mile delivery truck, packaging deliveries. But not only that, Dura Power has been working very hard with harbors like PSA in Singapore and the port of Rotterdam to electrify their autonomous guided vehicles, which are trucks that carry containers between the vessels and the storage area. And these vehicles are operating nonstop, right? And if you enable them to leverage some high power batteries, you can guarantee the longest uptime, because you can really charge within 15-20 minutes, and they don't have to go through long night charges, right? So these are the types of vehicles that are really operating behind, you know, our consciousness in a way that make our economy work, but we don't always realize how important they are. I think that it's worth also talking about long-haul transportation, right? I mean, the urban environment, I think there is a very strong case for batteries and electric vehicles. There's always a question about, okay, so how do we handle long-haul, whether it is trucks, whether it is marine, right? And there is clearly a challenge around range. That's a fact, because you may not have a security on the infrastructure. You may be going cross-border, so therefore you cannot rely only on on battery EVs. However, electrical vehicles are by nature more efficient than the alternative, and if they are fitted with range extender, such as fuel cells or other such technologies, they may be able to resolve those types of solution in a very sustainable manner. So this is how we look at this issue. We find that these new technologies like hydrogen are very complementary to batteries, since batteries really provide better energy efficiency, but can work with different types of fuels. So we welcome these new technologies to resolve the transportation challenges of tomorrow.
Thank you. So So we have this perspective of heavy-duty vehicles in the electric domain, and obviously there are solutions that work, even going into autonomous solutions. This is very interesting, but I think the market is obviously going towards hydrogen solutions for heavy-duty transportation, which is for now quite an expensive solution, in fact, still difficult to establish. And the battery sector in Poland is quite strong in terms of manufacturing, and it's nearly 3% of our annual export value at this point. And we have one big contender and big contributor to this, Impact Clean Power Technologies, with us. But I wanted to ask Mr. Kras, do you see that perhaps long distance freight, intercity traveling will shift to the railway, which will in turn get away from the battery electric version of powertrains towards hydrogen fuel cells? Do you see long distance transportation, freight transportation, going to the rail direction?
Yes, I do. So it shows that actually hydrogen is the very good carrier of energy for the long haul operations of both public transportation and the goods movement. So we observe it especially in Japan, the very strong development of the technologies around hydrogen, and the whole economy of Japan already moved to hydrogen. And we thought in Europe that maybe natural gas will be kind of the intermediate fuel for the next 10 years. But the Ukraine war showed us that we have to change the plans. And actually, most probably Europe will skip natural gas in their next development and accelerate the hydrogen implementation much faster. Of course, we are speaking about the green hydrogen produced from the renewables, which is still very expensive today in Europe, and we are still far away from bring the cost to the level where we could accept and the level comparable to the gasoline. But the horses already started running, yeah? So the race started. So I think that there is no way back, and there is no any incoming technology better than the hydrogen and fuel cells for creating electricity on board the vehicles, both the trucks and the buses, and also the railway vehicles. So for me, we were aiming in 2030 as the breaking year for mass implementation of the hydrogen technologies in long-haul transportation and across Europe. Hopefully, the rest of the world will follow. I mean, the rest of Asia and also US, rest of the world. So it's still 8 years from now. So we have plenty work to do and plenty technologies to develop and plenty of business model to develop, how to bring the cost down, because this is still the very important factor. Technology is already right there. As I said, we Impact also developing our own long lasting and very durable fuel cell for the heavy duty technologies, which we plan to launch in serial production in our new gigafactory in 2026 earliest, actually. So this is the launching date. So Impact also not only Dura Power is building gigafactory, we also announced that we'll be building battery pack gigafactory in Poland, starting from 2 GWh toward 5 GWh expansion, but for the heavy duty battery packs, as this is our primary business. So getting back to the long haul transportation, yes, the fuel cell will become the hydrogen become the major factor until the world will discover anything other. So we are monitoring the technologies worldwide, which could be created in the labs, and we see that lithium-ion cells will come at certain moment, not in the next 5 years, maybe in the next 10 years, to kind of the commodity technology. So today it's very delicate, fragile, a little bit dangerous with liquid electrolytes and all this precious metal inside technology, but we'll go toward something which can simply connect and put, I said, small energy storage for mobile application and for all handheld devices and this type of thing. But transportation will be moved to to something which has a much bigger energy density. And this is what we are seeing. And we're planning our development toward the next 10 years. And we will see for sure a lot of changes in the technologies. And the current technologies, what we are using, they disappear very, very soon. And lithium-ion technology world is changing like crazy. Every 2 years, completely new technologies, new chemistries. We have to manage all of them and bring them to the commercialization, which is I think one of the hardest tasks we can have right now, because you can read practically every week that new technology can emerge from the labs. How to connect them together, how to commercialize them, and how to make them efficient in terms of the cost of manufacturing and impact of the environment, which is still the biggest problem we have in lithium-ion world, that this is not clean technology. So I believe 7, 8, 10 years from now, those problems will be already solved, and maybe hydrogen will be the major energy carrier in Europe for sure, maybe in Japan, and hopefully in Singapore as well. We'll see.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, that's the kind of pursuit of getting things off the road as well, because obviously if we can change heavy duty transportation towards more freights being carried by the rail, that is also, I think, good for the environment and a good way to decarbonize that sector. Of course, not everywhere can be reached by a train. Anyways, I think that we are now seeing that these technological developments are going across various areas. We've talked about mobility as a service, shared mobility. We've talked about heavy transportation. We've talked about these components, these technological components of the road to sustainable transport. I wanted to ask Professor Chia, how do you look at that from the perspective of a timeline of how that rolls out, from the markets you observe, from the trends you observe?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a tricky question. I think there are many trends in urban mobility, and it seems like every city is unique in the way they deploy these different transport modes, transportation solutions. See, in dense Asian cities have mostly relied on managing car ownership and car use, while investing heavily in developing quality public transport systems. In Europe, a lot of cities have prioritized cycling, for example. And in North American cities, we see shared micro-mobility options also, such as the use of shared electric scooters. So I think the timelines of deployment can vary depending on the context. But I would say that we are entering an era of climate action, and it seems like many places are prioritizing this now. So what's common across many cities is this prioritization, both in terms of mitigation, meaning reducing emissions, as well as adaptation too. So readying the transport system to be more resilient against these impacts, growing effects of climate change. So in summary, I think the timelines of deployment can vary.
Okay. Of course, the context and the conditions that surround this not only business but this value chain, they vary and they change. So obviously that can depend. But if you were to kind of define where does the Singapore economy or the Singapore value chain and sustainable transport, in what ways does it lead? In what ways does it set an example? And what could be taken as a best practice benchmark from the Singapore market and implemented across other global markets?
Yeah, I think the Singapore context is quite interesting. I think we lead in sustainable transport in several ways. I think firstly, Singapore has a very good public transport system. So I think our public transport system needs to remain efficient, affordable, comfortable for all, so that it becomes the preferred mode for many, right? So the current mode share for public transport is around 60%, and hoping that this will grow some more. I think another way that we're leading in sustainable transportation is that the cities plan quite carefully to make sure that many amenities are available in the immediate neighborhoods that we live in. So within your town, you should have access to all the services that you're keen on, things like healthcare, food, recreation, things like that, to minimize the need to travel long distances. So again, the point about travel demand management is critical. So transit-oriented urban development that reduces travel demand can be very effective in reducing emissions immediately. So these are some of the positive features. But of course, there are several things I think we can do better as well, you know, as a city. So I think maybe we are ready to prioritize or rather reallocate road spaces to other uses, right? Other than prioritizing car use. So there's a lot of debate in Singapore now about bicycle lanes and how much space we should give up to create more spaces for pedestrians and cyclists. So perhaps we're ready to support the use of, you know, multiple transport modes and not prioritize car uses. I have a couple more points. I think we also need to electrify our public bus fleet and trucks more quickly. I think this was brought up by Bartek, Douglas, you know, the theme that we're appreciating in this panel discussion. I think there's a lot more attention paid to electric passenger cars, but so many other road vehicles like the buses and vans and small lorries making all these deliveries in the environment would have good potential to switch to electric options. So we really need to incentivize these fleet owners to convert to EVs sooner. And finally, I think this shift to electric mobility, you know, will not reduce carbon emissions if we don't source for this cleaner, low carbon electricity, right? So we need to talk about this coupling with the energy system too, and how Singapore plans to expand our low carbon energy infrastructure. So either by generating renewable energy domestically or importing renewable energy. So this would be needed in order to achieve sustainable transport and ultimately a sustainable city.
So a lot of really good, strong points, but still some opportunities and challenges ahead of us. And how is the hydrogen public transport? Do you have hydrogen buses on the roads? If you could just...
Yeah. Right now, I think we have more. The electric buses are being implemented. So a small scale, not at a large scale. Can be larger than that. It's encouraging. Hydrogen fuel cell buses, not so much yet.
Yeah, because in Poland, as we hear from local governments and their leaders, diesel powertrains are twice as expensive as electric per kilometer, but hydrogen are twice as expensive as diesel for now. So right. It's an enormous challenge for local governments, which have a limited budget and, of course, are always dependent on the possible support of the state in this regard. But I guess definitely, you know, zero emission is the direction to be pursued here, and obviously I think Bartek said everything that there can be said about this, but definitely hydrogen is the power vector to support, you know, heavy and long distance transportation. But I was wondering, because if we hear about Singapore, I wanted to ask Douglas, Duncan, you know, to you, you're present in the sea, you're present in Poland, but what opportunities do you see being offered on these markets? You can also mention the entire EU if you have that perspective, but of course, Poland and the sea are most important for myself. What do you see that is the strongest point there from your perspective, from the sustainable transport perspective and for your product oriented perspective?
Thank you, Alexander. I think there's a lot to say here, but I mean, we could start by looking at Singapore. Professor Chia has kind of highlighted some important points that you know, Singapore has done a very good job in providing alternative to passenger car driving, right? So a lot of buses, a lot of railway systems. Now they're looking at the bicycles and whatever, but in reality, a car is a luxury in Singapore, right? It's not needed by everybody, right? And most people can get around going to work with using public transportation. So I mean, I think you know, the electrifying the bus segment is quite important. In Singapore, you have about 6,500 buses. This is only for public buses, right? Not the transnational coaches, but these buses do need to be switched to cleaner fuels. And the reality is that I mean, although hydrogen is appealing for certain countries and maybe in the future, today green hydrogen is not easy to source. because the only way to produce green hydrogen is to get it through electrolysis, through solar energy, and Singapore has very limited solar energy or space to install massive amounts of solar panels, right? So they are already struggling with trying to bring more solar as part of supporting their grid. If you also need to use this to create hydrogen, to put back into hydrogen transportation, it's a big challenge, because at the end of the day, hydrogen might be the cleanest fuel, but it's a very inefficient fuel, just because you use electricity to create electricity, right? So our view is that, especially in an urban center, in an island state, electrification is really the best way to move forward, especially since you have short distances, you have very predictable routes. And the question is whether there's going to be night charging or opportunistic charging, more like Europe. That I think will be the question that we'll need to resolve in the next few years. But I think LTA is already testing electrical buses, and we expect that in the future, in order to meet their commitments, they will be replacing maybe 100 to 400 buses per year in order to get all of this fleet cleaned, right? So I think that to us is one of the biggest opportunity, as well as all other fleets for Singapore. In Europe, in Poland in particular, I think there are some challenges around infrastructure. I think there needs to be more investment on this. I think there are some challenges that the country is developing fast and requires more power, and is still quite dependent on coal and gas today. So it's a challenge. It's a great opportunity, right? And as Poland is developing, I think energy storage solution should be looked at as a way to add flexibility within the grid and within the transport system, to really enable a mix of technologies that will take us to a kind of a cleaner system. So to me, I mean, these types of questions between urban and maybe like more national, larger systems, there's different ways to look at it, but electric makes a lot of sense for the urban environment. I think long haul, we need to look at different types of solution, but let's focus on the heavy duty, and let's focus on the fleet types of application to have the biggest impact initially. Thank you.
Yeah. So every challenge is an opportunity there. I think we can sum it up in this way, and there are a lot. And of course, as you said, the Polish energy mix is, well, troublesome, so to say. I think sun radiation is also not so great. PVs are working in Poland, but obviously I don't think they will suffice to drive a hydrogen revolution. So this is similar. There is a lot more offered by wind energy, but the Polish legal framework is not favorable towards wind energy at this point. But I think that's one interesting point to make, that the Russian aggression in Ukraine has caused a lot of thought to go behind pursuing different alternative fuels, clean fuels. And the fact that for Poland, this is a double problem, because we also import the coal that we use, a lot of it from the Russian Federation. So these sanctions, this change is really influencing the pursuit of new technology and alternative innovation. And I think this pursuit is led by Polish companies. So I come back to Impact Clean Power Technology. I come back with a question, but a more strategic kind of business question, because I wanted, so your company, Mr. Kras, is reaching out globally. A lot of new chains or supply chains are being opened, and a lot of markets are opened by you. But how do you assess the competitiveness of Polish businesses on the example of your company in markets like Singapore, which are highly innovative, highly technologically advanced, but also other markets that you are present on?
Well, this question goes to the technology point of view, actually. So Impact was always the innovative company, and wants to be even more innovative in the future, as we see that the technology of the alternative fuels is accelerating right now. So I think the competitiveness comes in the today's world not only from the low cost, but also from the special technology and application of this technology in a particular application. And this is where we are very strong. So we all know that there is a huge troubles from importing goods from China at cost, not only by the Corona crisis, but also because of the other reasons. And we observe in Europe, but also in other parts of the world, that the low price is no longer the only factor for choosing the right technology to the products, but also the other values will come to the table. And that's why we think, as we are very innovative and can create the custom product tailored for the particular market, then we can be very, very competitive. The best example is maybe not from Singapore, but from the Hong Kong. So we just recently won the tender in Hong Kong for the public buses against the Chinese companies with one of the European bus manufacturers. So because we brought a lot more than just the price competitors, we brought more values to the product, which can be created in our part of the world. So I see the cooperation with Singapore companies not only from, let's say, exporting the ready goods with the let's say enough portion of innovation technology side, but also to make cooperation on the basic technology level. So there are fantastic labs in Asia, in I believe in Singapore as well, which are working on the future technologies, which we are very interested to implement to the reproducts. And this is the global problem of the technology labs. They developing technologies and they lacking this bridge to the reapplication. And Impact was always working as a bridge. So I was the guy who was visiting labs and visiting different companies and found, oh, this is very interesting technology. Can we buy it? Can we commercialize and bring to the product? So we were in our history the introducer of the certain technologies like high power charging to the buses. This is one of the examples. They were developed for something different, and we brought them to this particular market. So I see a broad cooperation possibilities with Singapore companies, especially when we believe they're very innovative and we know them already, and also work with several of them in the past as well. So we position ourselves as a bridge between the labs and the new technologies, and we could assess them from the point of the customer, in the name of the customers, and then commercialize them in the mass product, produce them also, of course, in the long series. So this is the input I would like to post to our Singapore colleagues.
Okay, thank you for that. So the competitiveness, of course, is very high, and as you mentioned, you're winning tenders against even local players. So this is very good news for our region, for Poland. At this point, we still have 10 minutes, so I'm looking at the Q&A section, and we have one question, which is regarding built-in battery charger technologies. I think we have two industry representatives. I don't know which one of you gentlemen would like to respond to this question. The future of built-in charger. Oh, Mr. Grazi, you already unmuted yourself. Please take this.
Yeah, if you can start. Thank you very much for this question. So I understand the built-in charger means built-in inside the vehicle. So we no longer has to rely on the public charging infrastructures. But it's is the question where the electric vehicle world comes. It comes to the fast charging. So nobody wants to charge its electric vehicle. It's either buses or passenger cars. No one to spend 8 hours in the standard socket with the low power to charge its vehicle. So all the technologies of the new batteries are also showing capabilities of fast charging. Fast charging means high currents. High currents means unfortunately large power electronics. As the vehicles has to carry already the batteries, so there is no room simply in the vehicles for very heavy, high-power electronics for the fast charging. So I believe it's not a good direction for the vehicles itself to carry the high-power chargers on board, and instead of it, we have to rely on the development of the high-power charging network. Just an example. Our buses in Warsaw are using 600 kilowatt chargers. So you can imagine it's a huge installation weighing 2 tons as a stationary charger. So it's impossible to implement such a technology inside the vehicle. So this is my answer.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in, but I think I'd like to mirror that viewpoint. I think to a certain extent, like onboard chargers, are used on the passenger car for the small batteries. But as we get into bigger and bigger batteries, especially in heavy-duty transportation, we are moving to DC chargers. We are moving to very fast chargers, and as Mr. Kras has mentioned, it just becomes impractical to include the charger on board. To me, especially in areas where the space is limited, the two best options are fast charging and battery swapping. Battery swapping is not available for everywhere, but China has managed to implement this for trucking quite successfully, as long as the fleets are standardized and they come back to the same kind of charging points. So it is possible to use this as well. But unfortunately, onboard chargers, I haven't really seen this as a viable option at this point. But I'd be happy to learn more about your solution and discuss further.
So thank you, but maybe a scientific approach, Professor Chia. What do you think of this innovation? How do you think that could be applied? Have you seen such solutions being applied in technology so far?
No, I haven't seen it myself, but I think I agree with the panelists so far that it seems technically challenging. Yeah.
But okay, I'll start with you with the second question we have actually. So about the upgrading of the technology in the lithium-ion batteries. I think Mr. Kras mentioned something along those lines a little bit during his earlier statement, that they're developing. We have the solid electrolyte, solid solutions for batteries that would improve, fire safety, that would probably improve efficiency as well. But do you see that this technology upgrade for I guess battery, reliability, battery efficiency being applied for public transport, so for heavy vehicles, especially used on a recurrent basis like buses?
So the question is how is technology upgrade manageable for public transport? I think that I see the question in the chat, right? Yeah. Exactly. I think that's being tested right now, and I think that's exactly the kind of the questions that we have on maintenance, the performance on the field, given the climate that we are in, and so on. There's a lot of auxiliary load needed for air conditioning of these buses, in a very hot tropical climate. So I think some of the trials that was mentioned earlier, investigating things like the total cost of ownership was something to be investigated as well. But overall, again, this mention of the values that come into play, right? So it's not just about the costs here. It's really about we have a target to meet. We need to reduce our overall emissions by a certain time frame, and these are the options available now, commercially available now. So it's a matter of making sure that it works and that level of service is not compromised, that our fleet can be remain balanced in terms of the downtime needed to charge them. So I'm hoping that this would be scaled up more quickly, that these upgrades would happen sooner.
Mr. Kras, do you think these upgrades for batteries for public transportation will be focused on, or do you think these hydrogen fuel cells will be pursued more?
We observe the improvement in the technology of the lithium-ion batteries. Of course, it's steady, but it's not. There is no breakthrough. even in the labs, which you can introduce anywhere soon to the market. So of course, the mobile phone batteries from the questions are also improving year by year, but not exponential. So there is no breakthroughs there. So I still using my phone, it still has to charge it every day, even if I change models. So it doesn't represent that we'll have batteries which will last for a week for the new smartphone because the energy consumption is growing there. But also please remember that technologies optimized for mobile applications are destined for the very short lasting. So it's usually developed for and planned for 1 year operation. So this is typical lifetime targets for this type of cells. So when we look at the public transportation application, it's completely opposite. So the market requires 10 years of operation of the one battery system, which is possible only today with the LTO technologies, actually, with this very extensive usage. So there is movement in both directions in mobile batteries and the automotive batteries, but there is no quick sharing of the same technology between those segments.
Thank you. Yeah, I see Dura Power is
happy to
joining the discussion as well. Please.
Yeah. So I think as far as upgradability of batteries, I mean it's an absolute must, and it needs to be planned by the battery system provider. The reality is, depending on R&D efforts, lithium technologies can be improved, at least specifically NMCs can be improved about 10-15% per year on energy density. This is what we see. But at the same time, if you look at Singapore, like a bus is required to operate for 17 years. And so it's very, very different than the Chinese market, where the expectations is more around 7 years, right? So in China, the batteries will last as long as the bus, but in Singapore, that you will have to go through a full replacement. So once you enable electrification of a bus, it's unlikely that this would be retrofitted with fuel cell within the same lifetime, right? So you can at least expect one changeover of the batteries, and within those 7 years or 8 years of life, depending on the specific profile of the bus, there will be a lot of improvements in the energy density, the power density. There's a lot of work that's being done on anode, on electrolytes, on separators. One thing that I will say though is there is a general focus on performance, especially in the passenger vehicle market. For fleets, performance is very, very important because it's a professional vehicle. For the passenger market, it is less important. It's more of a bragging right. And to a certain extent, we should put more as a society, and I think politicians should be putting more emphasis on safety and energy efficiency, right? Because these are the problems that we're trying to resolve, not who has the highest energy density. At the end of the day, the bad name that the industry is getting is due to this race for better energy that is nonstop, right? I think we focus on the safety primarily. The overall industry can show that we have a very strong track record of safety. We can deliver solutions that are safe and performing. For Dura Power, this is very, very key, right? Because we've been working on these markets since 2012, delivering high power battery packs and providing 100% safety. Are we interested in newer technology, lithium metal, solid state batteries? Of course, right? And if we can bring this to our portfolio, we will do so. But we are very conservative in what we put in the hand of our customers, because we have long-term relationship, and so we try to establish these kind of relationship where we jointly develop the batteries along with understanding the profiles of the vehicles and the kind of future roadmap of the vehicles. So we're excited to see a lot of new technologies coming into the market, both on the stationary side and the vehicle side. Very hard to say what it'll be, in 5 years, but clearly We also believe that solid-state batteries will probably be, the future within, the next 10 years. But we will have to see if, is there going to be a single winner, or is there going to be different batteries for different application? At the moment, it looks like many chemistries can support different technologies or different applications, and there is no clear winner. So that's about that.
I think the clear winner is sustainable transport, and I think decarbonized transport. This is what we're pursuing. I think it will win. The discussion could continue. I mean, this is a vast topic and so many issues. Unfortunately, time binds us. We saw it so much today. We heard so much that was very interesting, and the various solutions and trends and what can be done, and the various viewpoints. Actually, what I think for this discussion is of paramount importance is that there is an enormous area for cooperation between the markets of the CE and Singapore. I think the innovation is shared. I think what companies can provide, the competitiveness and the varied technologies can really make this market flourish. And hopefully that's what will happen. My name is Alexander Reich. I had with me today esteemed speakers and great experts, and I hope that was an interesting discussion for everyone, as it was for me. We had Professor Lynette Chia from the Singapore University of Technology and Design, Bartek Kras, the CEO of Impact Clean Power Technology, Douglas Duncan, the Head of Strategic Development, Jura Power Group. Thank you very much, and I pass the floor back to the organizer. Thank you very much for your attention today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you as well to all of our esteemed speakers today for the insightful and knowledgeable discussion. I think I can speak on SGInnovate's behalf to say that it was a pleasure to have a group of experts such as yourselves here today, sharing your insights on such an important topic. Special thanks to the team at the Polish Investment and Trade Agency, as well as for their help with putting this event together. I would like to also thank the audience for engaging us with your very interesting questions. For audience today, do take note that we will be sending out a post-event email with all the important information you may need, including a recording for the webinar. So do keep an eye out for that. And with that, we have come to the end of our webinar today. Thank you all for spending your Wednesday afternoon with us. And on behalf of SGInnovate, I would like to wish you all a great week ahead. And we look forward to seeing you at our events again. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.